Good morning and welcome to our free talk. So it's still chilly, isn't it? It should still be a bit warmer, I think, for this time of year. Um, but nonetheless, here we are. So today we are looking at when it might be a good idea to learn some new skills in our business. Um, this is definitely something that I've come across and things that I've needed to do over the years. And actually, when I look back to when I first started being self-employed, that was in 2001. And the world is a very different place now. I mean, there wasn't even social media then. So I think my entire career has been constantly learning new skills on top of our actual professional skills. So this is separate from doing CPD type things. This is more about skills that help our business flow, that we need outside of our teaching. And maybe if you've had a chance to go through and do the quarterly review that we did last time, you may then have come across or identified certain areas that might be a bit of an issue for you. So it might be tasks that you don't like doing, some kind of blockages or obstacles or challenges in your business where you might be feeling a bit stuck. You might have a great idea to do something, but then you feel like you don't know how to make that a reality. So it could be that you're needing to learn some skills to create some kind of content. It might be that you need to learn how to operate different kinds of software. There's lots of different things that can come up, and we have so many choices these days. And again, when I think back to when I started, the only option really for most things was to hire a professional. We didn't really have the technology to create so many things ourselves. We didn't have iPhones with cameras. There would say there was no social media. There wasn't Zoom. There wasn't websites where you can do your own branding and graphic design. It was very hard to build your own website unless you really knew how to code. So for all the issues that technology can bring, and of course, very aware of the kind of mental health downsides of a lot of social media. But if we're wise in our choices and quite careful how we use things, in some ways, there's no better time to be self-employed, entrepreneurial person because we have so many things available to us that really weren't possible before. The idea that you could make and sell video content by yourself 20 years ago, I mean, you would have to go to a studio and have a cameraman and pay people to produce things. And this is why only celebrities did yoga videos. So it's a very different landscape now. But equally, I'm really aware of the internal blocks that can come up with that. And I've definitely had conversations with myself around, if I wanted to be a marketing executive, I would have chosen that for a career and not chosen to be a therapist and a yoga teacher. So I really understand like the frustration and sometimes the emotion that can come with, but this isn't what I signed up for and I don't like it and I don't want to do it. And all of that actually is really valid. And I think it's really important to do a little internal reflection around what is really worth you investing some time and energy in learning and what is better maybe to outsource, or maybe there are certain things that you don't do at all because it's just not a good fit for you. Um, so some of the so if you're thinking about, oh, how do I know when I need to learn some new skills? So some things that might come up in your thinking or in your feelings are, if there are tasks currently where you feel like, oh, I just hate doing this, it's so difficult, it takes so long, it's a big faff, it's too hard, then that might be a place where either you need to update your skills. So if you've identified something that's really time consuming for you, the chances are there's an easier way to do it. And so that might mean allocating a little bit of time to investigate other ways of streamlining your processes. So if you are spending an inordinate amount of time, say, doing your accounts or your bookkeeping, there is quite possibly a quicker, easier way of doing things. Or it might be about processing new students who come in. Is there a lot of toing and froing and emailing each other, and are you having to like scan documents and then email them and wait for them to come back and then manually input into something? So sometimes we can set up systems which are the best that they could have been at the time. And this is stuff that I've really had to learn, because I got into a habit of doing things a certain way because that was the level of technology available when I set it up. And then just kind of being really ignorant about a lot of other developments, and people pointing out to me like, really, you're still doing it like that? Don't you know you could do it in a tenth of the time like this? So as an example, I use Acuity scheduling. Now, it is a paid for service, but I feel it's an affordable one. I can't remember exactly, but something like £20 a month. But actually, it cuts out an awful lot of toing and froing with new students, new clients, because it's linked into my website. They can read a lot about me, they can see my availability, and then they can book themselves in and pay online. So all of that is done without me having to be present. And even this morning, I got an email notification through that someone's booked in on Friday for a one-to-one. So they've obviously found me online. They've, they found my availability. They've worked out when is a good day and time for them. They've booked it. They've paid for it. They've completed their form online. So I have their intake form. So I have the information I need. They're already booked and they're already paid for, and I didn't do anything. So that, I feel, is a service worth paying for, that if we take a bit of time to invest in learning and researching what's a good fit for us, what has the right sort of functionality, there are ways that we can make life easier for ourselves. So that's one example. And yeah, for transparency, I also use SquareUp, which links with Acuity. So that's how they do the payment. And both of those things are compatible with my website, which is on Squarespace. So, I can imagine maybe some people watching this getting the heebie-jeebies about, oh, there's so many different things and it's complicated and it's technical. I promise you, I am not a naturally techie person at all. It's why I went into hands-on work and yoga teaching. But when you just expose yourself a little bit, and this is where our yoga is great, that we can take a few breaths, get calm. And then when we're in a good headspace, when we're a bit more embodied and a bit less, this is all awful and I hate it, then we open up the possibilities of actually receiving some new information and making a calm assessment about what might be a good idea and what might not be. So, that's one reason that maybe your systems are taking so much of your time and you could streamline them. Also, if you're finding something is just very difficult and time consuming, it may be that you just need more practice in it. So, for example, for me, Instagram Reels, I don't do loads of them. Because I don't love doing them. Like, it doesn't spark joy, but I think they're useful. And so I do one a week on my Yoga for Cancer Instagram. But when I first started doing it, it would take me like an hour and a half because I just didn't know, like, well, how do you edit this? How do you get the words to come up? How do you add music? It was not anything that came very naturally to me. But now that I'm in the habit of doing something more regularly, I can do it so much quicker. So sometimes we just need to practice a new skill and then we get better at it. And some of the fear goes. And as we learn it and as we repeat it, we get more efficient. So sometimes it's just getting over that fear of being a newbie and not being very accomplished. And I think the older we get, that can sometimes be the mental block that we're so used to being really good at the things we've been doing for 20 or 30 years. That's quite painful sometimes to start something new and feel like a 5-year-old and going, oh, I just don't even know the basics. Which is also a good reason to try and just keep learning a little bit as we go along, keep updating our knowledge so that we don't create a massive gap between where we are and where the rest of the world is, especially around technology. So again, that could be another reason or another area where we need to just perhaps keep practicing something till we're a bit more accomplished at it. Other reasons that you might need to upskill, and this is something that I'm looking at now, is maybe you've got to grips with something quite new, and then you might want to upgrade that. So, for example, for me, making videos was a very new thing. I think possibly for a lot of people, same as me, that lockdown was that kind of baptism of fire. It's like, crikey, let's just work out how to use Zoom, which I'd used maybe twice before through a younger colleague of mine who was very up to date with lots of her technological stuff. And so that was the stage one, was really getting used to Zoom, getting my own professional account, getting used to recording stuff and editing and uploading. And so now, again, I feel very comfortable with it. 4 years ago, I really wasn't. So there's always a learning curve. We have to allow ourselves a little bit of grace around, not being brilliant at the beginning, that beginner's mind. We need a little bit of space and practice. But now I would like to have better quality videos. So I'm investigating the possibility of having a separate camera that gives a better quality image. And again, I'm not very techie, but that's on my radar as something. Is actually, I want to upgrade some of the things that I offer and make it look a little bit more polished, a little bit more professional. Looking at making some things for some passive income. And so that's an area I've identified that I need to upskill a little bit. So needing to research, how do you record yourself with a camera when it's not necessarily on Zoom, or linking a camera that you use instead of my laptop one. So this is all new for me. So that's something that I'm planning to learn in this quarter. So that might be something that comes up for you, is another time where you're doing something, but you'd like to do something a bit better qualities. And that might mean upgrading your skills. So hopefully you've had a chance, if you've been reviewing your business anyway, to find some of these areas. And there's lots of things available for us now that we didn't have before, that we can make our business flow really easily. So it's looking at, what if have you got systems that need updating to make it easier? Like, are there better ways of doing it? Is there technology or software available to streamline things? Are there things that you really struggle with, that you just need to have more practice at to get good at? That might be something. So rather than just ruling out, oh, this is too difficult and time consuming, is that just because it's something that you've not got really good at yet? And then sometimes it could be that you need to upgrade what you're offering. So that might be a reason to upskill. And then looking at, we've touched on a little bit some of the mental blocks around it. So if you find yourself kind of categorically ruling something out, if you catch yourself saying, oh no, I can't do that, or that's just not possible, oh well, that's only something like big companies with big budgets can do. Oftentimes that's not entirely true. So, and some, our ego is very good at finding reasons and excuses to avoid things that we might find difficult. And so having that little bit of honesty around, am I saying this is impossible because it just feels too difficult, it's not very appealing, I don't know where to start. But if those things are coming up that are perhaps preventing your business from growing, then this is something that you might need to look at. And so an example that comes to mind is a conversation I had recently with a newly qualified teacher who has trained kind of later on in life. And so she's a super intelligent, capable woman, very experienced in her own yoga practice, quite newly qualified as a teacher. And she was asking about, rooms and studios and things like that. And in that conversation, I was asking her whether she would think about doing one-to-ones, and we discussed that, and that seemed like a good idea. And then I also asked her about offering classes online, because again, especially if you work one-to-one with students, I think offering Zoom classes can be a really good alongside that, because if your student is traveling or has to go on a business trip, or doing other things where they're not necessarily going to be able to meet in person, then you can maintain your teaching with them, occasionally online if they can't come to your studio, or if you're doing a home visit. And she was just like, no, not doing that. I don't feel comfortable teaching online. And I could see the emotional block with it. And it's fine, maybe it's not the right time, but it felt like she was cutting off a real potential area of growth in her business because of a more mental block about it, rather than it being a very considered, actually, I'm really clear about how I want to work. And that's not part of the picture for these reasons. It's not part of my business model for very sort of considered reasons, rather than this, I'm just not comfortable. I know I don't want to. And there is an area where I think it's worth working on, because what if she was comfortable with that? What if she became comfortable with that? How much could that open up the possibilities to grow her business? And I know for me, I was really not comfortable being on camera at the beginning. I never thought I would ever be doing stuff like this. And so sometimes it's just the exposure, the repetition, that we get more comfortable, like you overcome your fears by facing them and doing it. And so those are areas, it's like, look out for whether there's a mental block, an emotional block, that's meaning that you're saying no to something or ruling out a whole area of stuff, because that could really just limit your business. Like, are you just limiting yourself and cutting down your possibilities because there's this real block around doing something new or doing something different? Often there's a fear of failure, there's a fear of, public embarrassment, there's a fear of not being good enough. Like, all of these things are things that we can work on, and they're not the right reasons to not do something in our business. Because that's going to, just like I say, cut down and narrow your options and your possibilities, at a time where actually being a bit more agile and flexible in how we work and what we offer is the sort of thing that's going to help keep your business really sustainable. We all had to learn quite a lot during lockdown when studios shut. And so if that was the only way you are willing to work, is in person, in a studio, in a group, there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. I mean, it's a great way to teach, but if that's the one and only way you're prepared to offer classes, you can see how that really narrows down your options and your choices. Whereas if you do that and maybe some one-to-one work and some online stuff, then you can diversify a little and you don't have all your eggs in one basket, and it allows you to slowly develop over time, and try out some new things. So my last point really was about deciding between learning and outsourcing, because equally we are just one person and we're already trying to be every department in our business. And I have talked before, and if you haven't seen it, you might want to scroll back and look at who's in your team. So it is good to outsource some things. We do need to get a bit of support and not try and do all the things all the time, because that also will limit your ability to grow. It might be what you do at the beginning when you first qualify and you don't have maybe much of a budget for things. But there are times when outsourcing is more useful. So in a nutshell, my suggestion would be, if there is a task that you're going to do regularly and it's something really that only you can do, then I would say you need to learn that, because It's not going. So, for example, offering classes on Zoom, that's something you're going to need to learn, because you don't want to be reliant on maybe a partner, family member always setting it up for you. That's quite a disempowered place to be in business, and you don't want to pay someone to do that for you every time you're running a class. So possibly you might want to pay someone to teach you over a couple of hours or something. There probably are people who do that. But I would initially, ask around if there's anyone prepared to teach you a little bit. You may well have friends and family who are happy to show you. You can ask for help in different Facebook groups. I can't remember the names, but there are people who are quite technical who are happy to give advice on things. I'm certainly planning to ask about what cameras people use and what they recommend. YouTube is a really good resource. There's a lot I've learned on there. And yes, it can be a little bit time consuming, but for example, when I didn't know how to do Instagram Reels, I looked on YouTube. It's like, how do you do it? And there are millions of people who give these little 10-minute tutorials. So they're definitely worth doing. If you're looking at using some paid for software, like Acuity or Zoom or Canva, using their own help function, they will often have lots of resources in there to tell you how to do things. And, it's in their interest that people who use their service love it and recommend it and get the best from it. So there's other places that you can learn as well. So there's lots of ways that you can learn for free. And definitely ask around, get advice about what might be useful services for you to use. Times where you might want to outsource could be, for example, if you have one-off big jobs, for example, building a website. Now, I did build mine myself with Squarespace, and for me, I found it quite user-friendly. It allows me to, it's a bit of an outlet for my more creative side. So I quite like doing that sort of thing. But I know for some people, it might be a bridge too far. So that might be something where getting to grips with that, learning how to use the software or the functionality. I mean, I do have a colleague somewhere that I work has spent an awful long time sort of trying to build a new website with the help of her son. And I do wonder if this might have been the case where it's more efficient and cost effective just to pay someone else, get it done in a week, it's live, it's functional, and you can start generating some income. You can start attracting students and clients in. So it depends. If you feel like it's going to be something that you never actually finish, that's going to be this constant obstacle that is, hanging over you, is a real drain on your energy, and it's not something you need to do all the time, that might be something that's worth outsourcing. I would still recommend that if you do pay someone to do your website, that involved in that is them teaching you how to do little tweaks and updates, because you still need to go in and know how to change the day or time of a class. Like if you change your schedule, if you add a new class on, you need to know how to do that, or you are going to be paying somebody on a regular basis to do those updates. So I guess it's your choice whether you have the budget to pay someone to just take that off your hands, or whether it's worth learning how to do a few simple things so that you're a bit more responsive and in control of your of your kind of public media. Another area, for example, I've mentioned before that I have an accountant. So, that's a once a year big job. What I do is keep a very good spreadsheet of everything. So I'm on top of my income, my outgoings, and working out what it's okay to pay myself and a rough estimate of my tax. So I'm pretty much on top of all of that, but I'm not an accountant. And it just gives me that heart sink of trying to read through HMRC policies, legislation, budget updates, what expenses are allowable or not, where the thresholds check. I don't want to do that. And so once a year, I feel it's really worth the money I pay my accountant to do my business accounts and my self-assessment. I know they're done professionally. I know they're correct. She files it on time. She works out what my national insurance should be. And she just emails me a number and a reference and said, pay this amount to HMRC. And it's like, okay, I can do that. And it frees up so much of my time and energy to do things to help generate income for my business and reach new clients and do the work that I want to be doing. Other people might have a bit of a background in accountancy and they're really comfortable doing their own filing. So it's knowing your own skills. But yeah, there may well be some times where outsourcing is a good idea. Another thing that I outsource now is I do have a virtual assistant. So I plan my social media and I make the content. And then she does a lot of the actual scheduling for me. And it's also a nice accountability that if I've promised to give her something to schedule, if I've forgotten to do it, then there's usually a message saying, oh, can I have the thing, please? So that's really helpful as well. It makes sure that I keep up with everything and don't drift into not posting stuff. So there are definitely times where outsourcing is also a good idea. But often there are times now, because we're in a very changing landscape, that learning some new skills can really help your business flourish. So it's worth learning new skills if it's going to save you time, so all your systems are more efficient. If it means that you can improve your offering, so if you can upgrade what you're offering and therefore maybe charge more, or if it's going to help you offer whole new streams of income. So if it enables you to create a product that you can have as passive income. So, I know quite a few teachers build up a video library of classes that people can pay for. That's a nice way of earning extra money without having to deliver those classes again. Or learning a new skill that enables you to, like I say, for this newly qualified teacher is, well, maybe if you offered some online classes or even one class online, then you wouldn't have to rent a studio space and you could be quite flexible with that. And you could have students who don't live in your town because you could reach people a little bit further away who might not want to travel. So looking at that sort of thing as well. So I hope that's given you some ideas and some inspiration. And once we get over those initial hurdles and maybe a little bit of technophobia or that fear of failure, it can unlock a lot of freedom in our work. It can make things just more flowing, more easy. I think, if there's one word to come out of today, it is easy. And initially, learning a new skill isn't, but you want to look ahead to, wouldn't it be easy if this could be done quicker? Wouldn't it be easy if I knew how to do this and I didn't have to wait for when, you know, my teenage kid is in the right mood to help me with my website. Or do you know what I mean? So it's like, how can you make life easier, your business easier? And it may mean in the short term, there's the challenge and the difficulty of learning something new, but it can just unlock a lot of ease and freedom in your business. So then you can save time and do stuff that you really love doing. So I'm going to sign off for today, wishing you a very lovely rest of the week. Keep warm, and I'll see you here same time next Tuesday. Take care.